Well, everyone, we have made it through at least phase one of this incredible election season. And you know what, y'all? Something quite remarkable has happened, and Abdul El-Sayed has beaten Haley Stevens, overcoming a $60 million deficit against him. And y'all, this is a remarkable story that I think people are going to be talking about for the remainder of the year. This is big.
It is big, Norris, but I think, not to get too Debbie Downerish or Doomer, as the boys call me sometimes, there's so much work to do ahead of us, but we should celebrate for now. But have you seen the ad? We wake up this morning, so we go to bed at 4 o'clock this morning. Is that right, guys?
Yeah, I went to bed at 12:30. I'm 32.
Yeah, I went to bed at 12:32 because I'm 56.
I got home at 4, so.
But we wake up this morning, we walk into the studio, and our old mate Gage says to us, "Have you seen the ad?" I'm like, "No, give us 24 hours, Gage."
No,
Just
we didn't.
24
We didn't get
hours."
10 hours.
No, you didn't even get 2 hours by
No,
the sounds of
no.
it. Okay, do you want to hear the ad?
Let's hear the ad.
Okay.
Abdul Muhammad El-Sayed, the most radical Senate candidate in America.
Pretty dangerous.
El-Sayed pledged support for the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, a designated foreign terrorist group. He wants to hike taxes on Michigan waitresses, delivery drivers, and seniors on Social Security. He joined a sex offender and a murderer to demand the mass release of dangerous prisoners. And when his ally claimed America deserved 9/11,
America deserved 9/11, dude.
El-Sayed refused to disavow it.
I'm not here to disavow people's views.
Abdul El-Sayed, too radical, too dangerous, wrong for Michigan.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Barack Hussein Obama.
That is exactly what I said, Rachel. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Here's my thing, is that ad is coming out saying all types of things that are, number one, verifiably untrue. But, like, we could just run Mike Rogers totally supported by a guy in the Epstein files. And that's absolutely true. So I don't understand how we can just really be okay with something so blatantly racist and also untrue when the material is there of something way more heinous and way truer. That's the thing. I'm a little bit kind of weirded out about the ad.
I actually find it scary more than weirded out. I found it like that people can actually fucking lie, like straight up lie and cut things. And it just goes to, I know we're all from the interwebs, but at the end of the day, this shit should not be allowed. They should not be able to cut up and make and just blatantly lie and race bait, basically.
I also think, and this is a little bit of a pivot, though I think also deeply Islamophobic, people think that the average American cares way more about Hassan Piker than they actually do.
Yeah.
Like, oh my
I
God.
know.
The frequency with which I step out of my internet spheres and I'm chatting with people and I mention something about Hassan Piker and people say, who?
Yeah.
Like, nobody knows who the fuck this guy... He's on Twitch. Like, he's
No.
great. I think he's doing good work. He's a Twitch streamer. I cannot believe that this is what they think the most effective attack is going to be.
Yeah.
He's living rent-free in these people's minds. It is unbelievable. Like most people, like normal people I talk to, same thing. Never heard of him. Never heard of Hassan Piker.
And then they Google him, and if they're like an older white, they're like, all right, like,
Yeah.
Hassan Piker,
There's-
I'm in now.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
older white ladies on
Yeah,
Facebook
the older white
talking
ladies are
about it.
in, man. You should have saw that room last night. Them ladies were just like, oh my God. It was wild. But, I think the last thing I'll say about it, and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time when it comes to certain things like Islamophobia, is that, like, we're in America, and a lot of people want to, say that America is a Christian nation, and you can name all the denominations of Christianity, and yet every Muslim somehow is the same Muslim.
Yeah.
Y'all, this is a 700-year-old religion with all sorts of people from all sorts of parts of the world who believe all sorts of different things. Because one guy is a Muslim over here who might not be great, and another guy over here who's completely regular and normal, they're not the same guy.
And
okay?
it is something that people can figure out with Christianity in the
Yes,
United States,
you can
right?
tell-
And I think it's particularly rich when people are like, I don't know, the radical Islam, when we have people who are hiding behind a very violent facet of Christianity in order to strip people of their right to health care, in order to imprison people, in order to strip away religious liberties constantly. When people are complaining about ethno-states as they should, but failing to acknowledge that we are currently run by a very, very, very fringe, piece of Christianity. Come on. We can put this together. I know we can.
Nah, it's bad. But, you know, we're going to talk more about that. But first, I have to introduce everybody to the Point of Disorder podcast. I am your host, Norris Howard, joined alongside to my left, we have a content creator and organizer coming out of Chicago. We got Rachel Cohen. What's up?
Hey, Norris. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Thank you for joining us on the show. And as usual, the fan favorite, we got Julie here.
G'day, everyone. Great to be back. Very happy to be here with a win.
Yeah.
Opening with Barack Hussein Obama before introduced is the
direction
we're going to be taking today.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting show. But don't forget, everyone, you should follow us on all of our social media platforms at Point of Disorder and at Distill Social on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you decide to rot your brain at any given day, and just get all our cool content. But we do want to continue talking about this Senate race because, you know, we joke a little bit, but in all seriousness, it is a historic win. It was historically close. There was a historic amount of money spent, and it is a historic precedent considering that we see now, once again, the wave of progressive candidates are still winning big across the country.
And I think what's really important about this, and we spoke about it last week, Norris, the fact, I think this basically is a bellwether for the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. Democrats in particular, let's say the investor class, the traditional democratic process, which is basically they pour a shit ton of money into their preferred candidate, and it usually wins. They have a ground game, but this time it was definitely money versus ground game. Yeah. And there's no doubt about that. So it'd be interesting to see how that impacts the other primaries, because there are a couple more primaries coming up in the next couple of weeks, and then, of course, the general.
Yeah. And you know, part of what I think is really interesting here is Abdul wins only by about, as of recording, he was up by about 15K votes. Mm-hmm. That is like 0.5%. Now, 0.1% would have triggered the automatic recount, but, you know, I don't think we'll get that close. But he has strong showings in Washtenaw, Kent, and Western Wayne County, but Haley Stevens did win the city of Detroit. And I don't know if y'all remember, but I did say on this show, I'm getting Bernie 2016 vibes where he doesn't win the city of Detroit, but he wins everywhere else, basically. And it was even closer than that. So, you know, Rachel, I want to ask you, as somebody who came in, you know, just to hang out, catch the vibes, you know, talk to some of the locals about the race. You know, you were coming from Chicago, and Chicago at one point was a big flashpoint for ICE, big flashpoint for what's going on in the country. You know, what is your take on seeing Abdul's win last night?
I mean, I'm thrilled by the Abdul win. I've been plugged in here for a while because I am from Chicago, but originally from Chicago, have been there for the last 4 years, but originally from Ohio. And so I'm particularly interested in, as you've said, these kind of bellwether races where we have people who are running unapologetically progressive campaigns in places that are thought of as more purple or even more red. We're going to see some of that in Ohio, not as much as I'd like. But the kind of down-ballot sweep, too, of progressive ideology with Will Lawrence, with Donavan McKinney, with Chris Gilmer-Hill. One of my big takeaways from Abdul's victory, but also kind of the margin that we're seeing here, is that there will be a narrative that he underperformed because he was polling so well in advance, and that is objectively untrue. You don't underperform by winning against $60 million in outside spending, right? But I do think there's a real narrative here around virality, like national virality. Abdul was very, very popular nationally, online especially. That's not always going to translate to the kind of vote splits that people expect. And I also think, kind of to your earlier point, Donavan McKinney, in the online progressive organizing spaces that I'm in, people were really worried about that. I was really worried about Donavan because it felt like he wasn't breaking through in the same way as Abdul. Outperformed him massively in his district. Came out, at least when I checked, I think he was up 5. And that is in the very areas of Wayne County where Abdul not underperformed, but didn't do as well. Haley Stevens, right? And so there's something to be said there about specific ground game. There's also something to be said, perhaps not by me, but I'm going to say it anyway, about particularly like white progressive left influencers coming in and assuming that certain populations, demographics, areas are going to vote a certain way because their candidate is viral, and forgetting about histories of organizing and lived experience and all of these other things that just don't translate that way. I'm really excited for Donovan.
I'm
He
happy
rocks.
you said it because I'm sick of saying it because I say it all the damn time. So thank you.
Norris is right.
So thank you. I should make a shirt. But
Can I
Go
just,
ahead.
I just want to speak to Donovan for a minute.
Yeah,
we
for
will
sure.
go back to Abdul because I think it's important, but I think it's all of the same
They're very
picture.
connected,
It's very
yeah.
connected. So I think what happened, obviously, I think Abdul did have a down ballot effect. That is definitely right. But we've been talking for a number of weeks now about Donavan McKinney. Everyone forgot that he was already a politician. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't act when he comes into the room. You know, when you text message Donovan, he responds to you fucking straight away. Like,
Sure does.
yeah, like you flex, it is. But it's true. Like, he's just
Yeah.
that sort of person. And I forget sometimes that he actually is a seasoned politician.
like he has been in Lansing.
Correct. And so people know him. And so I know that we were all worried about Donovan, and sort of internally, I know a few people said to me, I'm really worried about that particular race. But my heart just could not get to the place of worrying about him as much, because he is a man that has worked for his district in politics for many years now against Sri Tanada, who we all fucking know. I know, Rachel, you may not have met Sri, but Sri Tanada is...
I've seen the videos.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that says whatever you see on the TV or on the
That's
computer.
the guy.
It's
That's
like
who he is.
he's even worse.
Yeah.
Well, I
Worse.
think too, you're exactly on something, Julie, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think one of the reasons that people were worried about Donovan was this perception that he wasn't campaigning as a full-time job. I know that was one of the things that came back to me, and I had heard that he had basically said to people, I'm not campaigning as a full-time job because, first of all, I'm a parent of 2 young children, and second of all, I'm a sitting state legislator and I have work that I'm supposed to be doing. And I think there was a strong sentiment that was a deficit. And I think that we forget that people want to vote for people that are doing work for them and that are continuing to focus there.
And I mean, also, let's just be frank. The elephant in the room was that you had the city of Detroit that hadn't had black representation, one of the biggest black cities in the entire country that didn't have black representation for almost a decade. And that was a stick in a lot of people's craw. That was a thing that voters openly said, this is a black city with black legislation all up and down from the neighborhood level all the way up to, Lansing, and we don't have a black congressperson. That was going to be a big deal. And Donovan showed that was what the voters wanted in that district. And so, I think that's important. But I think the effect, going back to the Abdul thing, and the effect that had is that there was a moment in time 2-3 years ago where socialist was a cuss word. It has no effect whatsoever as an attack in terms of what I'm seeing on the ground. It does not affect the young people.
No.
And the young people came out very strong. It's having diminishing effect on, I think, the college-educated black electorate. And it may still have some effect on the suburban voter, but even then, depending on the candidate, you can still see strong showings from them. We saw, a strong showing from Chris Gilmer Hill, who won his race. We saw a strong showing from Will Lawrence, who won his race. We saw, and even the races where the most progressive candidate didn't win, they weren't these 20-point blowouts.
Yeah.
And so for me, even just looking at whether we want to call it the Abdul effect or the Zoran Mamdani effect or wherever we want to call it, that style of progressivism or that style of democratic socialism is not becoming the scarlet letter it once was.
I don't think I agree with you. I do agree with you. I don't think we should ignore, though, the fact that socialism will be thrown around, but they'll also throw around communism,
Yes.
right? These people are going to be very excited to call everyone that wants healthcare for people communists. That's where they're going to go. I grew up in the 70s. I know exactly, the Red Scare. This is quite common. So I think we have to be really, really it's really important for us to remember where all of this comes from. The reason that people aren't scared of socialism right now is because of the fact that we are literally, you've got the billionaire class, the investor class that are like just sitting there. They couldn't give a shit about the rest of us who are struggling to, to put our roof over our head, pay for gas. We've got a forever war. They're just sitting there watching their, the ticker on the stock market go up and get a boner from it, and just basically ignore everything else going on around us. But at the end of the day, your average American life is not getting better.
No.
So therefore, that's the reality. That's when people start to go, oh, okay, if socialism means that I can more easily afford to feed my family, put gas in my car, and basically, deal with any health crisis, well, that's not so bad.
I think, too, there's kind of two threads here. The first is that I think this fear-mongering around communism as like a totalitarian force, when you have right-wing wannabe totalitarians in the White House, in every branch of federal government
and
right
in
now,
your streets,
in the streets, who are marching around,
killing people,
literally talking about suspending habeas, I don't think that it hits in quite the same way. Oh, what about your freedoms? As they're like murdering people in the streets. Not that they haven't been doing this for a long time, right? And I think there's legitimate things to kind of really tease out when we talk about the response to ICE murders versus ongoing and entire history of the United States response to murder of people by police, overwhelmingly black people. So I think that's one of the reasons why that kind of like totalitarian bogeyman is not hitting in the same way anymore. But I think the other too that I have found very compelling, and this is an internet, I think, line of argument a lot of the time that is correct, is they're going to call you a socialist anyway. We're talking about socialism as regards Abdul, who's been very careful over and over again to identify as a progressive capitalist and not as a socialist. We saw Kamala Harris get smeared with it. They're calling Joe Biden a socialist.
I know.
You might as well just actually stand for socialist ideology and for universal services, etc., because they're going to call you that anyway. And frankly, when you get elected, and people were saying, oh, they're going to take all this stuff, they're going to make sure you have universal health care, and then you don't even do that, I say lean in.
Absolutely. And I think what we just need to be really mindful of, there's an education process around this Rachel, because I think we're having an intellectual conversation here, which makes sense to all of us in terms of communism. But unfortunately, what I do see out there in all too many times is that people, I come from Australia. I've had people scream at me communist, because I come from a country that has Medicare for all, that has universal health care. So they just don't understand.
If you know anything about Australian
exactly.
politics,
It's so far from the
so
truth.
far from
right?
communism.
So I'm just saying that these people, it's a boogeyman that they don't necessarily understand.
Well,
and they don't understand that communism is actually what the totalitarian is what we're seeing right now, as you said.
Yeah, well, and I've spoken to voters out there in the streets. I've seen the content. I've watched it happen in real time, where you do have these people who literally had no conceptualization of what socialism was. Then here comes, Abdul, who, again, as we said, is not said he's a socialist, but comes in and just explains, hey, you don't have to be afraid of something like Medicare for all. It is a thing. I want to keep you alive. I want you to live. Like, it's really hard.
Socialism.
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
really hard
Exactly.
to argue over, dude, I want you to live longer. How do you no, I don't want you to want me to be alive.
you point out he's Muslim. That's all they've got.
That's the craziest thing.
I think that's what it comes down to. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, I just say to people, you know what? If we have socialized, if we have Medicare for all, don't worry. You can still go and pay for your insurance. You don't have to take the healthcare if you don't want to. What is wrong with you that you wouldn't take free healthcare? And you're paying for it anyway. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Rachel, that it is just... so much of it is just code for racism. It
is, and I want to speak on that right quick before we move on to talking to some of the down ballot races. Is that we talked about Donavan McKinney beating Sri Tanadar, and that had a big racial element to it. I'm letting everybody know right now, get ready, because you are about to see some of the most vile, awful, terrible attacks lobbied at somebody like Abdul El-Sayed. It's gonna happen to all these candidates that are running in some of these races. But just be prepared, particularly in the Senate race, to hear some of the most terrible stuff, because we still haven't got over that hump when it comes to certain stuff. We still haven't gotten over the hump when it comes to Islam, and that is going to be a major wedge when it comes to this race. So just get ready.
Absolutely. Can we just talk for a minute? I just want to reflect on the system that we have for the primary politics. Sorry, Rachel's about to...
He's about to explode.
Maybe explode. I don't know. But I think what I see is there's an incredibly toxic combination of the primary system that we have and unlimited money in politics that we see right now from people and corporations that don't necessarily have any fucking interest in the candidate or in the area that they're investing in, but just want to tip the scale for whatever reason that is. And I find that really frightening.
It should be frightening, but I will say this, is that it also was shown in this very same race that money doesn't win all the time, and it can be beaten. There was this feeling for many years that money is insurmountable, that if somebody comes in and spends 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars, that cannot be beaten. And I think this race has shown that it can be beaten, but I'm with you. That doesn't mean that it should be allowed.
But I think that some of that has happened just from the pure lies that have been told in some of this advertising, which is using this money. So, for instance, Will Lawrence, that dark money ad that came out basically suggesting that he was investing in big oil companies.
That just doesn't even make
The
sense.
bloke
That's my
has
favorite attack ad of the season, actually. My favorite attack ad, I posted about it on Instagram because if you haven't seen it, they're coming after Will for like an $11,000 401k. And I got a lot of responses when I posted it of people saying, are they coming after him because he's broke? Like, I don't understand the angle.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. They're saying he's too poor to help run the country.
I mean, the guy lives in a commune, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he's not, like, you cannot. So I think what I'm saying is it's disingenuous, and people read through that.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so there is a point of diminishing returns when you're using that money. Number one, you're flooding the zone, but you're also flooding the zone with shit and lies. And people are smart enough to see that through that. And I think the work that yourself and we do at Distill in basically being able to just kind of get to people, because in the past, no one would have spoken about that on your average on MSNBC or CNN. No one would have actually picked that up and gone, hey, Will Lawrence in, a little part of Michigan is, these people are lying about him. They couldn't have given a shit. But all of a sudden, people have access to the information. We're able to go, and you're able to go out to your followers and say, hey, this is just crap. Like, we're being fed crap.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important. It's one of the reasons I think that all of this money doesn't necessarily work as well as it used to.
No, it doesn't. But I do want to go back to Will for a second. So those of you who may not know, that's Will Lawrence in the 7th District in Michigan. That's Ingham County up there near with Lansing. He will now face off against Tom Barrett in the general, the Republican incumbent. And that's going to be a really tough race. I think it's going to be a tight, tough race because Will's got a lot of groundswell behind him, but Tom Barrett has been in that seat for a minute, but he's a veteran. He's actually been outspoken against the war, and that is one of the biggest platforms for the progressives in working against the Republican establishment. And so it'd be interesting to see that general race.
I think Will, too, it's going to be a big referendum on data centers,
Yes.
right? Which I think,
Yes.
and big tech. And I think he's been really correct to play it that way, because when I am in offline organizing spaces, which, oh my God, much better, log off if you can, after you finish
Touch
the talk.
grass.
Touch grass.
Touch grass.
When I have been in other organizing spaces, people really feel like that is a potential wedge issue that if Democrats were willing to capitalize on it would be very effective, because people hate them across the board. The environmentalists hate them. The people who hate like mass surveillance hate them. The kind of free stater libertarian vibes.
Yep.
People
The
who
rural
like
com-
corporate-
the rural communities hate them.
Yeah.
because that's where they end up every time.
Yeah.
I will say it's one of the maybe earlier times that, I wouldn't say first times, this has happened often, but maybe in the digital age, one of the first times that we've seen a lot of white people experience what would be environmental racism if it were happening to black people, right? Is that they're coming after...
That's so crazy. I've never conceptualized it like that, but you're right. Because it's basically like putting an oil refinery in the middle of, I don't know, Southwest Detroit.
Or,
So-
East Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now they're putting
Everywhere
it in
that they've been.
Saline.
And now it's in Saline, and
Yep.
we got a rabble rouse. That's a very great
Can
way to
I
put that.
I just want to mention, I think we have to remind ourselves all the time about what we're talking, the ground on which this is all happening. I saw Andy Levin posted something, who used to be a congressman here in Michigan a little while ago. One of the pod's favourite people, but basically he reminded us all that where Will won is Slotkin's old district.
Sure is.
Right? And she's definitely a centrist. I mean, there's no fucking way she's anything but a centrist, right? She didn't do well this week, by the way, because she actually backed one of the
the Democratic opponents.
Matt Marsden, I think his
Yeah.
name was. So, he just did not do well. But basically, those candidates that were against Will were fly-in candidates. Matt wasn't he was only recently moved to the area.
Very recently.
And the same with the other candidate as well.
Bridget Brink.
Bridget
Yeah.
Brinks.
Yeah. So basically, he's saying that fly-in candidates who fit some consultants' ideas about the flavour of centrists we need in November, no thanks.
Which we're also going to see in the Democratic primary in Florida between Alex Venman and Angie Nixon. Big Angie Nixon fan over here. I think that data centers, to come back around to that idea, it is a clear reminder to rural white people that really these interests just hate poor people. They
Flat
hate rural people. They hate black people. They hate anyone who does not have financial access and capital to kind of exactly what you were saying earlier, to come in and have that kind of sway. And so I think that it'll be interesting if Will can keep it focused there, because he's been really supportive of a data center moratorium.
Yep.
We saw Gretchen Whitmer. I assume y'all have talked about the Salinas data center and like the
Many
override.
times.
Many
Yes,
times,
yes,
many
yes.
times.
We've copped heat left, right, and centre, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is because, to your point around the war and kind of forever wars not playing quite as strongly there because of his opponent, I'll be interested to see if the anti-data center aspect that Will is kind of really making a cornerstone of his campaign, see how that plays, because I expect it's going to do well.
Yeah.
But like Donovan, what I do want to say about both of those characters as politicians, I don't think you need to meet them 10 times. They talk about you need to speak to somebody, 3-4 times. They're both the sort of people that you meet them once or twice
There you
and
go,
you
cool.
feel like you know them. So I think that really does play well in terms of voters, the ground game. I spend a lot of time myself, like in the real world, talking to people, and that really, they become kind of unforgettable.
Yeah.
They feel listened to as a voter or as a supporter. You feel listened to. You feel like you've been engaged with, and I think that makes a big bloody difference.
So it's really interesting, because with Donovan and Will, I got the same kind of feeling that I got from them when it came to someone even like Mary Sheffield. Here my connection here. The mayor of Detroit, Mary Sheffield. So when you talk to certain politicians or certain candidates or whatever, it's really important that they feel like they are from where they represent.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously that's a big thing against Mike Rogers. Like, he lives in Florida. He don't really go up here, whatever. But you talk to somebody like Donavan McKinney, and that is a guy from Detroit.
Yeah.
He from here. You hear it in his voice. You hear it how he carries himself. You hear it, but he embodies that part of Southeast Michigan. Mm-hmm. You talk to Will Lawrence, and you're like, dude, you are everything I thought a person from Ingham County would be. Like, that
The
is
person that I fuck with from Ingham County.
yeah, exactly,
So
right?
true.
Like, that is who you are. You are exactly what I thought a person from this part of the world would be like. And I think that plays well with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that plays well with your community. It plays well really when you're going out for these national dollars. It plays well. I mean, we talk about Zoran Mamdani a lot. The way Zoran Mamdani won his election is just talking about very specific niche New York shit that people were like, yo, if you were not somebody who really lived like me, you wouldn't know nothing about this. And that's the thing that I think you're starting to see some of these candidates have, that sort of common touch, for lack of a better term. And I think it helps progressives a lot. I think that is the thing that progressives and Democratic Socialist candidates in the past have severely lacked.
Yeah.
Just be a dude.
Yep.
Just be a person. just be a guy that I would just hang out with. How many times you heard, oh, I feel like I could go get a beer with them. Like, it's that level of familiarity that people have to have with you.
It does.
And now that we're starting to see progressive candidates embrace that style of politics, I think it is very, very, very telling for what it could do for the rest of the country.
And it's not swagger.
No.
It's just personality and warmth.
That's it.
It's kind of like a very interesting kind of like, you know what, I just feel like I know you now.
Yeah.
And I think something else that stands out to me about Will and Donovan and this kind of groundswell of progressives in this moment is that you don't feel like they're berating you. And
They
I
don't
think
talk down to
that's
you.
One of the
They
things
don't
Yeah.
talk down to you.
really-
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as somebody that was in Ohio during the 2016 primary, it was the first one I voted in, and I'm very open about this on the internet, that I voted for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 primary. And some of that was because when you're bringing in something new and transformative, you have to kind of explain it to people and not make them feel dumb
Yeah.
that they're
Yes.
not already familiar with it.
Yep.
And I don't know that the left has always been great about that, but I think we're getting much better at it.
There is
Yeah.
a degree of elitism. Even it doesn't matter where you look. It's like you said, you constantly. I moved here at around, just before that, and constantly people talk to you in acronyms in the same way that they would talk to you in a finance way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like, mate, this is politics. You need to talk to me in a way that makes me want to engage with you,
Yeah.
and so that I can understand what's happening, so I can make the right moves to make things happen.
And that was the thing actually that stood out to me, because I was out at a bar randomly. I just went to have a beer by myself, overheard some folks talking about some politics, decided to completely butt into that conversation and talk about what was going on with the race. And they talked about the debate a couple weeks ago between Haley and Abdul. And the thing that they told me that made them wholly support Abdul, these were just regular black folks from Detroit, is that I'm voting for Abdul simply because when I saw the two of them stand on stage and talk, Abdul explained to me what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I felt like Haley just told me what she'd already done, of which I didn't see the results of any of that.
Because my life is not significantly...
It's not better.
It's not better. I
Right.
can't see it being better. So whatever you're telling me that you're doing, it's clearly not working.
It's not working.
And what I can hear is someone speaking to me about my healthcare, about putting money back in my pockets, and getting rid of billionaires basically
Yeah.
buying politicians.
Yeah.
There's a reason that when the government was trying to undercut leftist organizing decades ago, that they were violently targeting black on the ground left-wing organizers who were making people's lives materially better.
Yep.
And that they were not, they were firebombing homes in Philadelphia. They were not firebombing like the leftists at Harvard, right?
Right.
And that's because of a lot of things, including racism, but it's also because one of those groups is a lot more effective in reaching people and preaching actual transformation.
So, it's very interesting. One more race I want to update everybody about also is the state house race for the 8th district in Michigan. That's the state house, which was won by Chris Gilmer Hill, friend of the show, Chris Gilmer Hill, who beat incumbent Helena Scott, who I think completely self-torpedoed her own, re-election campaign by saying just some really racist stuff about Abdul El-Sayed, and it was reported on multiple times by multiple outlets. But beyond that, Chris Gilmer Hill is also somebody who is unapologetically a democratic socialist.
He also
and
knocked so many friggin' doors. That kid was just
he was on
everywhere.
the streets,
Oh my
everywhere.
God. I think he was going to come in and be on the pod today, but I'm pretty sure he may still be asleep. The
Yeah,
poor
he
guy.
was
honestly,
gassed.
he really hit the ground. It was insane. It was a great example. And, his campaign manager's a friend of the pod as well. She's been on, Jess, and they have just been so grassroots.
Yep.
It has just been one person at a time, it's just been really, really powerful.
And that district, for those who don't know, encompasses northern parts of Detroit, Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge, that area. So, definitely an area that could have gone either way. But I think, Chris Gilmer Hill getting out there and talking about his message, who, like we say, is very, tax the corporations, get the corporations out of politics. He's talked about public power, which we do have in Wyandotte, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. Public power, getting our politics away from DTE. Very, very progressive stuff that probably in a different time doesn't land, but because the landscape is what it is now, people are clamoring for that style of politics, and it clearly has bared out in the State House District for the 8th.
No, absolutely. And I told y'all this before we started recording, but just to get it on record here as well, I have a friend who lives in Ferndale, and we got dinner, and then he came with me to one of the like candidate activation events, and Chris was there, and he pointed at him and said, "I think that guy knocked on my door earlier this month." And that's just remarkable, frankly.
It is.
And that's how politics should be.
It
Yeah.
is.
It should be like, I went to dinner, I saw the guy, he knocked on my door earlier. Cool, that's what's up, man. Because again, going back to that folksiness, that level of availability, going back to that, people need to feel that you are a real person.
Absolutely. Can I mention one more race?
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry to do this, but this is another friend of the pod, Joanna Whaley.
Yes, Joanna.
Joanna Whaley, she's been on For the Sake of the Argument, one of our other podcasts. She was a former megachurch pastor who endured 15 years of conversion practices, so she's transgender woman. But the best part about it, she was against a guy called Frank Liberati. And I don't know if you remember this, Norris, but Frank basically sought to get her disqualified from the ballot over her name change.
Yes.
Basically, her the
Kept trying to dead name
signatures.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was basically trying to get rid of her, and she's won. So shout out to Joanna. We love you. We're very glad that happened. We did a lot of helped out trying to get that messaging out to make sure people knew that this prick was doing that. Can you imagine?
Well, I think that's also a big takeaway for me from that. Well, it's a takeaway I already have. This bolsters a takeaway I already have, which is people really act like, especially in these Midwestern states in the South, that the path to victory is throwing trans people under the bus, right? That the path to victory is hanging trans people out to dry. And over again, that is disproven.
Yep.
Over and over again. And people just keep doing it because they cannot fathom that. I think it speaks to a lot of internalized transphobia from a lot of establishment Democrats in particular, who cannot imagine that the everyday person cares way fucking less about somebody's gender marker on their ID than whether or not they are going to support progressive policies and tax corporations, right?
Exactly.
There we go.
All that. And she's in a downriver race. So this is not
Yep.
an area that's particularly, this
Super
is,
progressive.
No, it's not super
but it
progressive.
is a changing demographic down there.
It
You are
is.
getting younger people down there moving and starting families, and so it's getting a little bit more progressive down there. But Rachel, I want to ask you in particular. You coming here from Chicago as we wrap the show up. Chicago's much larger city than Detroit, and it is a place where people look at and they say, all right, if it's working in Michigan, if it's working in Chicago, if it's working here, it's working there. What does that say for the rest of the country? Looking at these races here in Michigan, what do you think this spells for the other primaries that have yet to pass, and what it could mean for the general?
I think it spells that we really need to plug in for the general, because I think the entire country is going to be looking at Michigan as this bellwether race with the Senate, with Will Lawrence, and that when people like me come in from out of state, you got to see this shit through, and you've got to really lock in, and you need to be conversant on these races, right? I don't want to point any fingers, nor hype myself up too much, but I think there's a lot of people who came in from out of state that if you asked them yesterday in line, as Jeremy did, do you want to be on a podcast tomorrow, would not have been able to come in and talk about the politics of these specific races that they're here supposedly to support. And I think that speaks to a demand for greater attention. And really, if you want to support a politician because they're exciting, which I hope you do, that you need to get a sense of that place. I think your point about place and people seeming like they are from the places that they are from is really, really important.
Yeah.
So my big takeaway is I'm super excited. And also that we need to lock in, particularly those of us that are from out of state that want to come in and support, get very conversant on these races, be able to participate and see this through, because it is imperative that especially people that are not in. Donavan, congratulations, Congressman-elect. I'm very excited about that. But Will, Abdul, we really need to see this through the general. And I think more than that, though, that's my... All right, I'm doing the thing where it's coming in and I'm saying, I'm berating a little bit, but I'm berating my people
you're
on
not
this,
berating.
not Michiganders who I think really showed up for the rest of the country. I think there's going to be an attempt to spin this as an underperformance, as we said when we came on, because they were absolutely creaming everybody in the polls, El-Sayed, and it ended up being a lot closer than polling was. And I think we're a little bit of the victims of our own success on that, and we need to reject that framing entirely, because waking up to a DSA, Working Families Party sweep in Michigan, was beyond exciting.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a huge opportunity here to show that these politics can win. And then I also think we really have to execute and show that they can work when we get these people into office and continue to build out these coalitions.
Dig it.
My take is we've got a shit ton of work ahead of us. We've spoken so much about the youth and how important they've been in this race, and they absolutely have been. I think we have to coalesce around the white ladies from the suburbs, the black women in Detroit, not to be, to categorize anything, but I think we really do have to speak to all of these different people that have really fought hard for Democrats, particularly in the last, 10 years since we ended up with Trump. There was definitely a wave of like bringing these people together. We've really got to try and coalesce all of these people and make sure that we all understand, first of all, we've got to get him elected and get all of these people elected, and then we've got to hold their feet to the fire.
That's
because
right.
as we keep saying, none of this, we've all seen Gretchen Whitmer and what she's been doing over the last year or so, and it's not a given.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think a fine point on that too that triggered for me what's really exciting about the kind of plug-in of young people in support there that I have been thinking about is colleges were out of session for these primaries, right? MSU wasn't here, UMich wasn't here, Wayne State wasn't here. All of these schools that are going to be really, I think, hotbeds of organizing are going to be back for the general. And I'm excited about that because I'm giving lived out right now, and I recognize that. But what got me into politics was being a young person during 2008 and being excited about Barack Obama and what he stood for. And I think there's a real opportunity here. So many people feel disenfranchised. I think young people feel very, very demoralized about the future of the country. And I think that if these campaigns can execute and get young people involved, which I think they can and will and should, I think there's a lot of work to do, but I'm feeling optimistic.
Cool.
And to that point, we had Stella sitting in that seat. Stella, who's the head of the Michigan College Democrats, sitting in that seat last week where we were sort of talking about what happens next, like if Haley wins, So we need to do, so it's going to be very exciting to see her and her team be able to like really mobilize and feel good about what they've done up until now as well. I think it's really important to make sure that when kids get involved in it's a dirty game, politics. It's a dirty fucking game. When they get involved, it's so important that they see some wins and then they're motivated to move on and keep it going.
Yeah.
And I will say the one shout out I will give is we'll see if it plays out this way. But I am heartened by the Stevens and McMorrow response this morning to El-Sayed's victory. I thought it was really admirable. And as someone that has been shitting big time on Haley Stevens over the course of the last couple of months, I think justifiably, because I think there's a lot of some of the Islamophobia that we're seeing is a holdover from establishment Democrats, making that an acceptable kind of vein of attack. But I am excited to see the kind of potential unity behind a progressive candidate that, at least thus far, I think Mallory and Haley have done an admirable job
and to that point, and to your point about coalescing and making sure everybody is on the same page, I want to implore all my talking head, content creator, progressive folks, do not fall into the same thing that happened during the primary in New York, where everybody started creaming and slamming on older black voters.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that this time around. All right? They're stupid. They don't know what's good for them. Let me tell you, that is a perfect way to get people to not listen to you, okay? This is a perfect opportunity to say, why did they vote for Haley Stevens or Abdul or whatever? This is a perfect time to sort of have this postmortem, have the autopsy of what happened in this election and how to get everybody on the same page. Because to be perfectly honest with you, there is no way in the world I'm going to be okay with a guy who says we need more ICE. in Michigan. We need less people paying attention to politics. We need more big business coming in and taking all our water and building more data centers. Like, let's not, okay? So there's a perfect opportunity, as all the candidates who've been involved in all these races have said. The objective is to make sure that you are not getting any more bigots into the Senate.
Florida doesn't need 3 senators.
It certainly
Man.
does. They have too many. Anyway.
Exactly.
I said what I said.
Yeah. Well, with all that said, everyone, we're going to close the show out. But where can everybody find your content if they want to get in touch with you or see what you're all about?
In the comments of Head in the Office's clips, usually. But it is Cohen, COHEN.489 on most platforms. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, and don't forget, you can also find clips of this show and all of our other content on at Point of Disorder, or let me redo that. Don't forget, you can find all of our videos and content at Point of Disorder on all of your social media platforms, as well as at Distill Social. That's going to be it for this week's episode. Julie, say bye to the people.
Bye, all.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Point of Disorder. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to everyone who listened today. And if you like us, give us a like, a subscribe, or a review on any place you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Distill Social and at The Guerrilla Politic. This is the Point of Disorder podcast, signing off. Stay sharp, stay progressive, and above all, stay tuned.